I'm Rafael Lozano-Hemmer. I'm in Basel to do my very first show with Wilde Gallery, though I have been working with Wilde for a while, mostly showing in Geneva. It's my first show in this beautiful gallery. And for it, we've prepared a show called Excuse You. It's a show that has 9 artworks, most of them very recent. And they have to do with the daily interruptions of our both real and digital life. So the stammers, the stumbles. It's an artwork that starts the show called Excuse You, which simultaneously kind of is giving you an imperative. It's excusing you from something, we're not exactly sure what. And I will take a little bit of water, thank you so much. And it's also supposed to be like a commentary on the invasive part of technology, where you have cameras that are measuring your heat, you have cameras that are recording your fingerprint or your heart. And so there's a moment where you as a citizen say, excuse you, to the system, let's say. The Neon is a collaboration with a poet called Lee Kotzilidis, and we're going to sort of be doing more in a series of truisms that we've done in Neon before. So Excuse You opens the show and is the name of the show. To start, we have an artwork that is a C print. It's a print that was made as a series. It's called Performance Review. And in Performance Review, what we do is we have hundreds of fingerprints. Fingerprints were first used for police identification in the 19th century by a guy called Juan Bucetich in Argentina. And Bucetich realized that no 2 fingerprints are alike. And then ever since the 19th century, we've been using them for identification of individuals. So for example, today, your fingerprints let you into your phone or into your country. Now, this array of individual prints is made specifically to look like a landscape. We're interested in this idea of identifying individuals, but then actually giving them anonymity by creating a landscape out of the biometric portrait. And ultimately, it kind of shows this comparative representation of the fingerprints to show the diversity that it entails, but also the fact that you cannot divorce technology from the desire to control people. So a lot of the work that we do at the studio is right on the boundary between how do you make something poetic, for example, a connective collection of representations of portraits of people, with something that is ominous and Orwellian. So Performance Review is a C print, and it comes in different series. This one, I believe, is called HSBC. Is that the one that you... So this is Performance Review HSBC. I've named them after banks because of all entities in the planet, they're the ones who most use the capability to identify, track people in a way that is absolutely fundamental for our society. And the piece itself is presented without really like a beginning or an end. It has no proscenium, it has no vanishing point. It's a flat field. So it's about how do we make tangible the data that is collected about us in the world of art. In this other room, we have 3 big pieces. We'll start with this artwork right here. It's called Thermal Drift. And this is why I brought icy cold drink, also because it's very hot in Geneva and Basel today. But you'll see that my cold drink right now is being represented by a very bright light in here. Both the videographer and myself are generating heat. This is a thermal camera. It's a camera that does not look at light, it looks at heat, the heat emanations of the body. And what we've done is we've created this kind of environment that connects the heat in the room to the heat in our bodies as an emission. So for me, what's interesting is the idea that heat is neither created nor destroyed. It's a rule of thermodynamics. But the idea that there is a fancy and ongoing relationship between our skin and the environment, that we're a continuity. And so all these little dots, think of them as slowed down packets of heat that are emitted by the body. Now today is a very hot day, as I said, in Basel. So these little dots that you see here, this quanta, are small. But earlier, when it was quite cold, you will see that they grow into large packets. The piece itself is a mirror, so there is nothing to see here. If I walk away, all you see is the dynamics of the heat in the room. But for example, when the radiators were on or when the windows were flowing, you're basically visualizing the heat in your house or in your museum. And so it's a little bit similar to insect vision. So many insects, snakes too, some bats, can see things without light. They see it only through heat sensation. I have long defended that artworks in our world have sentience. They see people, they feel them, they sense or they hear them with microphones, and it's the artwork that is expecting for the public to be an integral part of the artwork. And this is the latest in that series of trying to detect the public and make them a part of the artwork in this kind of system. Over here we have an artwork that's also quite new. It's called Descending a Parametric Staircase. Descending a Parametric Staircase is a work that is inspired, of course, by Marcel Duchamp. We have taken the color palette of the Nude Descending the Staircase, his painting, and we've kind of mapped it into an Unreal Engine system. So this is the kind of computer graphics that is used for video gaming. So we have now made a constantly rotating spiral staircase that never ends. It's parametric, it's generative. It means that it's not a video. It means that it's constantly renewing the staircase forever. And in that sense, it's similar to Duchamp's rodal reliefs. So he had this hypnotic, sort of turning spirals, and we're trying to do that. Now, the project from time to time shows naked people walking down the stairs. And oftentimes, after we tell people there's naked people, they look at it for a lot longer. They spent an hour looking for the naked people. A reveal is that, in fact, the naked people is only their shadows that you see from time to time. There was somebody just walking by. And so for me, this kind of artwork is in the case of Wilde Basel Gallery, is just a reflection of their spiral staircase, which I thought it was just a beautiful architectural feature. And yeah, the idea that these kinds of artworks kind of open up, realities or bring realities to be co-present with ours. So this is Descending the Parametric Staircase. And the final piece in this room is also moderately new. It's an artwork called Password Breach. Password Breach is a selection of dozens of e-paper screens. E-paper is not like a normal screen. It's actually, if you power them off, they maintain their text. And if you come very close to them, you will see that there are words being presented in each one of them. So these words are in fact a stream of Butthead, Gohan, Cloud, Devo, Winner, Mountain, 123 Bomb. These are in fact passwords extracted from salient data breaches. So we have here, for example, the Panama Papers passwords. We have here, for example, the Ashley Madison passwords. We have one set of passwords called RockYou 2021, which is a big agglomeration of passwords. There's millions of them. And then what we've taken is those passwords, similar to the piece that we just had there where the fingerprint is the ID. The passwords are what protects us in our virtual world, right? It's our connection to the cloud. So by streaming them here and smearing them, we present them over each other. And they give us an insight into how we protect ourselves in the digital world. The answer is incredible. Like, the people think that they're being safe by writing completely ridiculous passwords. Some of them are quite humorous. Most of them are sexist, racist, brutally subconscious comes out when you read what people use for their passwords. They're presented in this kind of paramecium or fungal growth in the room. So it's kind of like an infection that your building has with all of the streams of passwords. From time to time, this piece all of the screens coordinate. This is similar to what fireflies do. Fireflies shoot and shoot and shoot, and then all of a sudden they all synchronize. And that moment is shown where you read one of the passwords in all of them. And in that, we're just trying to sort of assert that this is not just at random, that this is a system that is constantly churning through the passwords. An important note is we have so many passwords that they'll never repeat the same one. So when you see a password here, it's because it was used in one instance, and that one will not be repeated in the future. The final piece in the first floor is a work called Hormonium. And if you can bring the camera nice and close, I'll tell you about this work. So this is an artwork which represents all the hormones of the human body. What we did is we worked with an endocrinologist who helped us understand how hormones modulate, moderate, control all of our biological systems. And we studied 4 levels of biochronology. In other words, how time affects our hormones. So you'll see, first of all, there's a C-like pattern that's generative, it doesn't repeat, and little characters floating. These waves are actually made out of acronyms, things like TSH, which is the thyroid hormone, or GH, that's the growth hormone, or so on. So you've got them all in here. And then we have 4 levels of time control. The first one is age. So when you're born, the artwork is only 0 years old right now. When you're born, you have a lot of growth hormone. You have a lot of different types of hormones to help you grow, which then, once you're a teenager, come down, and then other hormones take over, like reproductive hormones. The artwork does that. So when it's young, it's not going to be showing TSH or progesterone or any of that stuff because it's right now a baby. Over time, the piece will age, and it will reach, when it reaches 90 years old, it goes back to 0. And so in the lifetime of this artwork, you will see how the hormones change over it. The second time domain is circadian rhythms. Circadian is what happens in day and night. For example, in the morning you have oxytocin and you have like all these things to wake you up, adrenaline, right? At night you got melatonin, right? It helps you go to sleep. And these are natural cycles that happen in the body. So if you were to look at this work at night, you'd get a lot of melatonin. Whereas in the morning, you'd be getting more adrenaline and so on. That's circadian. Infradian is the 28-day cycle, the reproductive cycle. So right now it's in day 18. And so once this piece matures into puberty, the piece will exhibit reproductive hormones. And finally, ultradian. Ultradian is the biochronological measure of time as we eat, normally 3 times a day. So when the piece is hungry or when it's just eaten, it'll create insulin, for example, which is affected by the ultradian cycle. So all of this, of course, is ridiculous. And that's, of course, part of the reason why we do it, because it's a materialization of the turbulence and chaos that actually controls us. I have 3 teenage kids. Sometimes when I'm speaking to the teenagers' kids, I know I'm not speaking to them. I'm speaking to the hormones. Right, so I'm just kind of like, ooh, okay, and so you take a step back and then you wait for half an hour and then the waves go away and now you can talk to them. But for me, as with all of these artworks, we're trying to make tangible the invisible systems and complex turbulent systems that make us, us. And the final floor, come this way. This is an artwork called Bilateral Time Slicer. It's an artwork which is inspired by traditions of time slicing in different cultures, from Hindu traditions to Aztec traditions, where the central character is always the youngest, and then as time passes, it gets passed into time slices. If no one is here, the piece starts closing. It remembers the past, 1,000 participants, and it starts recreating from the past what has happened before it. The project is meant to be growing as an archive. So we've made a lot of these recording type projects, And it's kind of interesting because, for example, if you have kids, the piece grows with you, you know, so as your kids age, sometimes they will come back in the form of slices of time. Or, for example, my mom, who passed away, all of a sudden might show up. So it takes you straight into psychotherapy. And the work can exist in different types of dimensions. This one is more like a door than a window, but it can be a treatment that's projected or quite a small screen if necessary. Of course, it's whatever people, if you would like to see me, it's whatever people wear also becomes a part of the artwork. And so you've got this axis of symmetry. The way the piece works is it looks for your face. You see how as you move you're controlling the axis of symmetry. And then when you're centered, it decides to make a slice for you. Next room, and final room of the whole show, this room we've dedicated to pieces working with the idea of bottled water. This is an artwork called Botella de Castigos. Botella de Castigos is in Spanish because in most cultures you give your first kiss or your first punishment with spin the bottle. But in Spanish we call it the bottle of punishment. Okay, the bottle of punishment is created here as an animation where we gave it thousands of brands and designs of bottled water to an artificial intelligence system, which then created hundreds of new bottles of water that do not exist, complete brands, that get put into this clock-like device. The clock is in fact only measuring 59 seconds, so there's something wrong, right? It doesn't reach 60 seconds, it goes around in 59. And then it presents it almost as a continuum. So for me, what's important in a piece like this is this idea of taking the commons, like the water that we drink, the earth that we stand on, the air that we breathe, and we give it brands, we give it rarity, we give it a specific kind of marketing. And so for me, it's interesting to study, well, how do companies, for example, brand the commons in order to create the sense of elegance or exclusivity. And the piece is being shown together with another work inspired by bottled water. So it's this piece. It's called All the Waters. This is a robot that writes the names of all of these brands of water that we've seen. So most of the brands are things like Clear Life, and healthy living, and other names to try and sort of send this message of continuity or sometimes exclusivity, like glacier water, like we're being sold purity. And the names are actually quite mythological and poetic. What happens is this little brush dips into water, this is pure water, which then starts writing the names of it in a heated plate. So as the name is being written, it evaporates and then gets breathed by us. So this is Apricot. I don't know where that bottle of water is from, but it has, I think, like 4,000 different brands of water. So the projects are inspired a little bit by the Nestle CEO, who famously said and then took back the idea that water is not a fundamental human right, which of course makes sense for him because he's the owner of Evian and San Pellegrino and all the other bottlers. But I think it's very important as a issue of global security that the water be remaining in the commons. And so in my work, I try to look at how the machines or the systems of representation can help us organize, compare, and analyze and criticize the ways in which we ourselves are harming our chances of survival.